We're moving on to Assembly Member Wilson.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Mr Mayor. And I'm sure you won't be surprised to hear me wanting to talk about this issue. Well, you know, it's an issue I've been very passionate about over the last year and a half since I've been elected, and indeed before that. So, on Friday, the Home Secretary asked protesters to show some love and solidarity to those who've been murdered and not go ahead with protests at the weekend. The Met Police made a similar request on Thursday afternoon, asking them to consider pausing your activity and postponing it for another weekend. And in relation to events on Tuesday, the Prime Minister asked university students not to protest, saying it was un-British to have so little respect for others. First time I think I've ever agreed with the Prime Minister, and also first time I've ever agreed with the Education Secretary, who asked I would urge them to pause, reflect, to remember our shared humanity. Now, you didn't make a similar request, did you, Mr Mayor?
Well, I agree with the comments made by the Prime Minister, the Education Secretary and the Home Secretary about the sensitivity in this issue. Nobody's talking about what people's rights are. That's really important that we distinguish, and neither did any of those people. The rights people have, but it's about being sensitive and having empathy to how people are feeling. By the way, I'm regularly criticised for doing too much communication. I'm being criticised for doing not enough communication. But I've been quite clear in relation to, you know, ever since I first became mayor, one of the first events I did was to attend Yom HaShoah to reassure Jewish people about this city being a beacon of people to be safe in. And it is really important we're sensitive to, yes, of course we've got rights, you know, we're not breaking the law, but it's just been a bit hurtful, it's been a bit insensitive, it's inadvertently leading to people feeling scared. And that's why we should be sensitive to these issues.
Absolutely, we should be sensitive, and that's why all those four Labour politicians who I've just quoted all respectfully asked those protesters to not protest on Saturday, to not protest on Tuesday, on the anniversary of that horrific massacre in Israel, 1,200 people killed and the hostages taken. But you asked people to be mindful. Now, I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, how mindful do you think the chants like globalise the Intifada really are?
I'm really happy to play semantics with the Reform Party all day long if we're going to compare and contrast words we use in terms of public discourse and debate. Look, I'm quite clear in relation to what happened last Thursday was a heinous terrorist attack. The only reason those people were attacked was because they were Jewish. The only people that place of worship was attacked was because it was a synagogue. We also know, park for a second, it's the most religious day in the Jewish calendar, Yom Kippur. Jewish people were fasted and, repenting, not having access to their phone. As soon as word spread about that attack on the synagogue, people were really, really scared. People were staying in their homes and not leaving homes. And what I want to see is people being kind to their neighbours, showing friendship, checking up on their friends, seeing how they're doing, how they're feeling. You can call that mindful, you can call that being a good citizen, you can call that being British, but it's basic humanity. And we can debate words or semantics, but I know, as the mayor for more than 9 years, how I've made Londoners have a sense of belonging, and how the Reform Party has done the opposite.
Back to my question, globalise the Intifada. That is not a mindful thing to say, is it, Mr Mayor?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to get into the definition of semantics, but I can understand how that's felt by Jewish people. Jewish people feel when they hear that you're, whether you intend it or not, what you're suggesting is that they are at danger in relation to the consequences of the Intifada being globalised. Of course I get that.
And you've said it's all about context when you're discussing with Assembly Member Hall, and we know what the context is. We found out what the context is on Thursday last week. For 2 years, we've had this untrammelled anti-Semitism, hatred of Jews, river to the sea, globalise the Intifada. We know what it means. We know what it means, and it's been allowed. This culture has festered for 2 years, Mr Mayor, and you can talk about being mindful, you can talk about all the platitudes. Look, if there were awards for hand-wringing and platitudes, you'd win them every time, Mr Mayor. You absolutely would. But what we want is action. You talk about Jewish members of our community feeling scared, feeling frightened. The brave men and women of groups like CST and Shomrim, they're not frightened, they're angry that they have to be doing what they're doing because this culture has been allowed to fester in our city, in our country, and we saw what happened on Thursday last week when it's not nipped in the bud. That's what we're seeing in London, what we've seen for the last 2 years. It's not just about last weekend, it's not just about last Tuesday, it's not just about last Thursday. It's happened repeatedly. And the powers are there to intervene. who have the powers under the Public Order Act to intervene, to impose conditions, and, if necessary, to stop these marches going ahead. Nobody wants to block the right to protest per se, certainly none of us on this side of the chamber, but where they cross the line into hatred, into inciting violence, and then that violence has happened as a consequence, that's where we're asking you to intervene, Mr Mayor.
Well, Chair, I must be given a chance to respond to the various assertions made by the member. It's very important. So firstly, there are no powers under the Public Order Act for the Mayor to stop a march or to disrupt a march. It's really important you understand the law if you're going to be the party of government. Point number 2, anti-Semitism didn't begin on October the 7th, 2023. Point number 3, it's arguably the oldest form of hatred known to mankind. Point number 4, I was the Mayor of London. They went to synagogues in the weeks preceding the terrorist attack on a synagogue in Pittsburgh in the USA. That was before October the 7th, 2023. I'm also the Mayor who has invested a huge amount of money in educating young people across London about the dangers of anti-Semitism and other forms of hate crime, to teach our young people to be resilient and stoic when it comes to hatred against their fellow citizens because of the colour of their skin or because of the God they worship. I am also aware about the importance of language, which is why you won't hear me using some of the language members of the Reform Party use, because it encourages, it mainstream, it normalises hatred, which is why, for example, last summer, when there were race riots across the country and they weren't in London, I spent a lot of time with the Jewish community, the Muslim community and others showing solidarity as well. But does he understand the ripples of fear that marches in the centre of London organised by the far right lead to Jewish families, lead to Muslim families, lead to black families?
As often happens, Mr Mayor, you're asking me a question. I'm very happy to swap places if you want to ask me questions. I'm going to have to draw a line to it there because I don't want to take up too much time from my wonderful
This is the problem, Chair. They don't want to debate because their arguments fall down when there's scrutiny and some debate. That's the problem with the Reform Party.
Let the member finish.
You don't answer the question, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, actually, I will ask one more question. Why did the Jewish community not feel loved and wanted when other people do?
Well, I'm really happy to compare and contrast the numbers of Jewish supporters of the Labour Party versus Jewish supporters of the Reform Party. I want every Londoner...
We'll see in the local elections next year, Mr Mayor.
I want every Londoner to feel loved or wanted, whether you're a member of the Reform... Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but, you know, the Reform Party did stand at the last mayoral election, and you were the sole Reform candidate. You've got another person now who didn't get there by winning an election as a Reform member. Let's be quite clear. And so...
OK.